Okay, so I know that we're talking about logic apps here primarily, but we so often see API management sat in front of logic apps that this demo begins its journey in API management. And what I have here is I have an API in API management, and it is protected using Azure AD, Microsoft Entra ID. So in order to call that API, we need to go off to Entra ID to get a token. We then need to pass that token through to API management in a header. Then API management is going to validate that token and check that I have the access that I say that I do. And what it will then do is call my logic app, which is the backend to API management. But that logic app, it too is protected using Microsoft Entra ID. So in order to be able to call my logic app, I need to be able to fetch a token. First of all, that would be granted access, but also fetch a token and then pass that token through to my logic app. Then the logic app itself talks to Service Bus, and it can do that in two ways. It could do it using the SAS token that you can configure with Service Bus, or it can use managed identity. So I've enabled it can use Azure AD, but I've enabled managed identity in API management to kind of make that, to go and get that token and then call the logic app on the back end. So I'm just going to show you quickly what this looks like. So in API management, I have this validate JWT token and policy. And the important thing to look at here is the audience and the role. And so what I've done is my client that is calling this API, it has an app registration in Azure AD, and I've granted it permission to the app registration that is represented within APIM. And if I can successfully get a token, these values will be present in my token, and then they'll be checked. And if these aren't here, this will get thrown out. So I won't kind of delve into the details of how I set all that up, but I've got a blog actually. I'll share a link, and you can see how to do some of this stuff. And then if I scroll down here, then we have this line, authenticate managed identity. And this is telling API management that in order to access this resource here, which happens to be my logic app, to use this user assigned managed identity value here to go and fetch a token, it automatically appends it to the authorization header in the request. Then it goes and hits my logic app here. Now you can see that my logic app doesn't have the usual signature or the SAS token that you would normally have on the end of the logic app. I've removed that because I'm only using, excuse me, I'm only using Azure AD in order to authorize my logic app. And I'll just show this working just to prove it does work. So the first thing I'm going to do is get a token. I'm then going to make a call, and hopefully that will succeed with a 200 OK. So that shows that the end-to-end authorization that has happened from this client, Postman, to API management to the logic app to Service Bus has succeeded.